Hi, Year 5, let's find out what happens to the poor Splat gang. Chapter 14, The Headmaster in Control. For a whole minute there was complete, horrified silence in the crowded boiler room. Then the headmaster said very quietly, "Put the fuses back." "We won't," Ingrid shouted. "You're evil and wicked and we won't do anything to help you." The headmaster smiled. "Oh, I think you will." He raised his voice slightly. "Children, come along to the door." There was a tramping of feet in the corridor outside, and suddenly the space behind the headmaster was full of faces with blank glazed eyes, 30 or 40 hypnotised children. "We'd better do it," Ian groaned, "otherwise they'll just make us. Come on, everyone." Despairingly, they began to push the fuses back into the box. Then Harvey switched on the main supply again, and they were all blinking in the sudden glare of light. "That's better," said the headmaster in a satisfied voice. "Now, we'd better repair the rest of the damage you've done. Rose, where are all the teachers?" "I saw Mandy and Ingrid lock them into the swimming pool." "And the prefects, Jeff?" "Locked in their room," Jeff said. The headmaster nodded and glanced back at the miserable members of Splat. "I have had you watched, you see. I'm not entirely stupid. The only thing I didn't know was what had happened to the camera crew. But from what I heard as we arrived, I would guess that they're shut up in the old quarry. If you're sensible, you will hand over the keys to me. Now." Sullenly, Lloyd, Ian and Mandy tossed the keys onto the floor. At a signal from the headmaster, Rose and Jeff scooped them off and ran away down the corridor. The headmaster didn't speak again until the sound of their feet had died away. Then he stepped further into the room and looked at Dinah. "I think," he said, "that we'd better discuss what's going to happen next." "I know what you want," Dinah said stiffly. "You want me to win the great school quiz for you so that you can have a chance to hypnotise everyone in the country. Well, I won't do it. If it's the only way to stop you, I'll make sure I get all the questions wrong." The headmaster raised his eyebrows. "You have worked things out very cleverly. I can see that I've not overestimated your intelligence, but you have underestimated my determination. You cannot refuse to do what I want." "Can't I?" Dinah stepped forward belligerently, but the headmaster didn't look in the least bit worried. Turning to the children massed in the doorway, he snapped at them in a brisk voice. "Listen to my orders. In front of you are 6 straw dolls. They are no longer needed. You will advance on them and," he drew a deep breath, "you will tear them to pieces." Simultaneously, all the children swivelled their eyes to look into the boiler room. They showed no signs of recognition. It was plain to see that they were seeing precisely what they'd been told to see. As they started to advance, Dinah watched Lucy, who was in the middle of the front row. Her face was as calm and cheerful as if she had been going out to pick daisies. Knowing it would be no use, Dinah began to yell at her as the children marched into the boiler room. "Lucy, it's me, Dinah, and there's Lloyd and Harvey and the others. You can't hurt us." "She won't hear you," the headmaster said icily. "She's programmed to listen only to me and the prefects." Dinah and the others cowered against the wall behind them as the children came steadily tramping towards them. "Think, Dinah, think," Lloyd yelled. "There must be some way out of this, otherwise they'll kill us." The foremost children had reached them now. Slowly they raised their arms, hands outstretched like claws. "Oh, help!" Harvey yelled. "Someone help!" The claw-like hands grabbed Dinah, found her blazer gripped firmly by Lucy, and she heard Mandy's shirt rip. From beside her, Ingrid wailed, "Oh, I'm frightened!" More and more hands were pulling at them. Glancing across the room, Dinah saw the headmaster smiling calmly, with no sign of wavering. Coldly, she realised that he wouldn't relent. If he had to kill them, he would kill them. As someone started to tug at her hair, she shouted, "All right, I'll do it. Whatever you say, just stop them." At once, with a triumphant smile, the headmaster said softly, "Stop, children." Slowly the arms dropped. Mandy gave a quick gasp of relief and Harvey drew a sobbing breath. "You will be in the quiz?" the headmaster murmured. Dinah nodded, hanging her head. "And you will win?" "That's what I've got to do." "Very well." The headmaster's mouth twisted in an unpleasant expression. "But do not suppose that I will be so foolish as to trust you. Your friends will be in the hall, surrounded by these children. If you break your promise, all I have to do is say, 'Destroy the dolls,' and they will be dead. Is that clear?" Dumb with despair, Dinah nodded again. Beside her she heard Lloyd's familiar snort, comforting in its ordinariness. "We may not be able to stop you," Lloyd said scornfully, "but we still think you're wicked. Wicked and pathetic. Fancy being prepared to kill us just for money." For the first time, the headmaster looked startled. "What do you mean?" That's what you're after, isn't it? Lloyd said stoutly. You want to hypnotise everyone so that you can get their money and be the richest man in the world. Well, I think it's pathetic. To their amazement, the headmaster suddenly flung back his head and laughed soundlessly and horribly. When he stopped, he shook his head at them sadly. Money. Oh, yes, I should be really pathetic if that was all I wanted. No wonder you've been my enemies. No wonder you think I'm wicked. Well, you are, aren't you? Ingrid said stoutly. He shook his head at her again. No, I'm not wicked. My plans are for the good of everyone. His voice rose almost hysterically. My plans are glorious and splendid. But you aren't going to tell us what they are, said Dinah. You'll see, very soon now. He looked round at them all, and when you do, you will understand how wrong you have been. Until then, I must remember that it is the fate of great men always to be misunderstood. Now, let's get to the hall. They began to walk along the corridor, the headmaster gripping Dinah's shoulder and the others marching in the middle of the crowd of hypnotised children. As she walked, Dinah was thinking busily. What was it that the headmaster wanted? He at least must believe that it was good, but what was it? In the hall, everything was chaos. The television men had just arrived and they were leaping about at high speed, hanging lights, positioning microphones and connecting wires. In the centre of it all, a wiry figure with a crop of purple curls was dancing wildly from place to place. Come on, lads, Eddie Hare was shouting. You can do it if you work hard. The headmaster walked straight up the middle of the hall, with all the children following. Dinah saw his face twitch with distaste as he stared around at the crazy scene. Then he forced a jovial smile and tapped Eddie Hare on the arm. Ah! With a scream, Eddie Hare fell to the ground as if he'd been shot. You got me! He lay on the floor looking up at the headmaster. I beg your pardon, the headmaster said gravely. I didn't mean to startle you. Good for the soul being startled, chuckled Eddie Hare. Nothing like the unexpected for keeping people on their toes. As he said the last word, he bounded up to his feet. What can I do for you, oh master? Do you want me to bring the school into the hall yet? Why not? Why not? Eddie Hare flapped a hand. Good for the lads here to have an audience, and I don't suppose they'll be finished until 30 seconds before the show starts. No time to get the audience up then. Yes, get the kids in now. And have your quiz team ready at the side of the stage, but make sure they're all quiet. We don't want a racket. Oh, yes, the headmaster said with an amused smile. I think I can assure you that all my pupils will be perfectly quiet. Dinah stood at the side of the stage, out of the range of the cameras, with the rest of the children taking part in the quiz. It hadn't occurred to her to wonder before who would be picked to make up the rest of the team. Now she discovered that it was to be Rose and Lucy. Rose was her usual unpleasant self, but Lucy, woken out of her hypnotised trance, was bubbling with excitement, hardly able to keep silent. She grinned merrily at Dinah. It was all that Dinah could do to grin back. You nearly killed me an hour ago, she thought. But looking at Lucy now, she found it almost impossible to believe, and if she could barely believe it, who else would? The Manor Road quiz team had just arrived, and Lucy smiled at the boy with glasses. You're Alec Bates, aren't you? She whispered. I saw you on television last week. You're very good. The boy grinned back at her cockily. I've been practising since then. I'm even better now. You'll never beat us. One of the sound engineers frowned at them and wagged a finger. Shh, he said loudly. The show's just about to start. As the first notes of the opening music filled the hall, Dinah craned her neck to see what was going on. In the front row of chairs were the other members of Splat, surrounded by wooden-faced children, all ready to attack them if the instructions were given. She shuddered and looked sideways at the headmaster who was next to her. He was staring across at the stage. Out there, Eddie Hare had begun a fight with a giant plateful of spaghetti, and the spaghetti was fighting him back, huge white strands slapping slimily around his neck, and spoonfuls of sauce splattering messily all over the stage. The headmaster's face was white. His fingers twitched and he looked as if he was going to be sick. He can't stand it, thought Dinah suddenly. Mess actually makes him ill. Somehow that thought was rather comforting. At least he had weaknesses. The knowledge made her feel bold, and in a very soft voice she asked the question that had been bothering her for days. If you hadn't got me in the school, how are you going to arrange to win the quiz? The headmaster dragged his eyes away from the stage and glanced at the other team. I should have hypnotised them and made them lose, he murmured, but I shan't have to do that now, shall I? No, of course not, said Dinah quickly, afraid. But she was not too afraid to risk another question. And what will you do after you've had your minute on television? But he just smiled at her and turned back to the stage with a shudder. Eddie Hare had started to fling pepper at the spaghetti. He had 3 or 4 huge scarlet pepper pots with black stripes. and he was shaking them, frantically spraying showers of pepper everywhere, and the spaghetti was sneezing. Its plain strands whirled everywhere, like the arms of an octopus. Dinah was left to wonder desperately what was going to happen. She was so deep in her own thoughts that she jerked with shock when the sound engineer prodded her. "Quick," he said, "onto the stage." "What? Didn't you hear? The quiz is about to start." We'll find out what this mad quiz is all about tomorrow. Bye, guys.